It's time for the Access of Easy podcast, the weekly technology digest that keeps you ahead of the curve. Brought to you by EasyDNS.com.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Access of Easy podcast. This is the audio sidekick to the weekly newsletter. You can get it at accessofeasy.com. Len, there's lots to talk about today, but before we start, maybe we should get into the usual stuff. I want to say to you and to everyone else who's out there listening to the show, Happy New Year. This is the first post-New Year show. Want to check in on you there. How's things? What's going on? How the heck are you? It's a Friday morning coffee rip. We've been doing these more frequently the last few weeks because our schedules have been a little tricky for Thursday night. But anyway, what's a good word over there?
I think it's going to clear up our schedules for Thursday. Now everything is good, Joey. Now finally got to see the sun yesterday for the first time in a very long time, which is nice to see. It gets you down and out when you don't see it for a long time. So I kind of understand what it's like to live in BC because we've had that type of weather over here. Well, you know what? I'll still take it any days. It's better than the cold, sunny, snowy days we used to get here over here.
Time.
But
Big time.
Yeah, all's good. How about you, Joey? Happy New Year.
Great. Yeah, had a good New Year. My wife's got the dog at the office today, so I'm solo here for a bit. I'm going to go into my office later this morning and hopefully try and get a workout in once we're done recording this. I was just telling you we bought a car yesterday, so that was an interesting experience. That's the first time I've purchased a car without support from one of my parents. Not necessarily financial support, but rather support at the negotiating table, which is probably overdue. I think I was just telling you before, I won't go into the details here, but it was overall a good experience. I think we went at the right time. The only people I saw yesterday in the 2 or so hours we were at the dealer taking cars out were wearing the shirts that the dealer employees wear. So not too much action on the lot. And I think those cars are priced to move. So I'm happy about that. Anyway, let's get into this. The quote from last week, Len: "Be at war with your vices, at peace with your neighbors, and let every new year find you a better man." That was from Benjamin Franklin. And the winner was, I want to say Jan, but maybe Jan. I don't know. Hard to say. Anyway, well done. And this week's quote: "Every moment is a fresh beginning." If you know who that's by, I mean, there's got to be 1,000 people who have said that. But if you know who Mark was thinking of when he gave you that quote, put in the comment section. No Googling. Not that I think it would even help you this time, but no Googling, no looking it up. And if you win, you get your next renewal on EasyDNS, which is great. Len, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stories today, as usual. Where do you want to start, my friend?
Well, Leaksmas. I love that name. Yeah, it's a cyber criminal data breach event. Apparently resulted in a treasure trove of stolen data. And this was about some 15, almost 16 gigabytes worth of data. That's a heck of a lot. Think about how large is your spreadsheet.
Yeah, exactly. When you think about what kind of data was taken, 16 gigs is like an astronomical number of pages of, usernames, passwords, addresses, whatever. It's crazy.
Yeah. This is not like stuff that's pictures and stuff, which is, they could bloat over, or movies, it could bloat. This is just actual hard data, like text and stuff like that. That's a lot. So the incident that I'm talking about is being dubbed as Leaksmas.
0 out of
interesting
5.
name.
0 out of 5. 0 out of 5.
I'm not going to rate it. I just think it's a very interesting name.
Could do a lot
the cyber criminals, they're releasing this massive amount of data that they obtained, and it includes.
What was the cyber criminal's name? The 3 Lies Men, or do they have a better name than that?
You know what? I don't even have that information.
There's no name.
It's just a bunch of whatever. And they didn't end up stealing a bunch of personal information and financial information, and they were targeting individuals and organizations in numerous countries, including the United States, France, Peru, Vietnam, and Mexico. It's basically covering a whole bunch of countries throughout the globe. And some of the leaks involved well-known companies such as Movistar, and this is a telecommunications provider in Peru, and Klarna, a Swedish fintech company. And they're also, the cyber criminals were also targeting government agencies, and they released data from a Chilean government agency and a major credit service in the Philippines. So you can see basically it's a different swash of the different companies, agencies through different countries as well. And the good news, if you do want this information, it's available. And in fact, they were offering discounts on the stolen data. That's incredible stuff that they were doing.
Boxing Day sale.
I was like, it was. I love that they're doing that, but
Oh,
yeah, they're
man.
offering this discount because of the holiday season. They wanted to cash in on the Christmas spirit, and the timing of the data releases, it's coinciding with the holiday season. So it's intended to exploit the surge in online activity during this period. So a lot of people are online, basically giving up a lot of their information freely, not really thinking much about it. And here we are now. It's available. It's available on the dark web. And it was available for a discount. You may not have to pay full price. You may have to wait for Black Friday next year to take advantage of it. Anyways, and this goes to show you that there is a lot of information out there. A lot of these agencies and companies have it. There's really not much you could do aside from be very diligent when you're giving up your information. If a company or agency is asking for information, unfortunately, most of the time you're going to have to give it up, but think twice before you do so, especially for a lot of the free stuff. I'm thinking about like apps and shit like that, because if you're going to be giving up information for those things freely, remember, you are the product, and nothing is free. You are the product. So be very careful about giving information up. And if you give up information that is about you, but could be rather old and doesn't point to you, maybe an old address, think about that. It could be an option if you do have to give up information, but there's nothing else I have to say about this.
I'm not going to add too much either. This is, basically a clone story of what we've talked about a few times over the last month. People getting into databases and other, private information from companies that you don't really think too much about. Like, I don't know anything about like a company called, what's this company called here? Movie Star Peru. But you mentioned there, like, pretty crazy Leaksmas event data leaks distribution chart on the website. It's looks like a 23andMe result, right? It's like, oh, you're Peruvian, you're Vietnamese, you're American, lots of different slices of that pie. Here's a question for you. I haven't been to a movie in a long time. I haven't like gone to a retail store in a long time that I don't already shop at. If they asked you for like an email or some information about you when you checked out, or if you like went to a movie and they asked you for like, where can we follow up with you about your experience? What would it take for you to give that email? Like, surely normies are still doing this at some reasonable rate, right? But you got to figure they're getting less and less information from people as these stories continue to surface, don't you? Or am I crazy? Are they still just like giving this stuff out willy nilly?
I haven't been to a lot of these places. I don't know if they're asking for it, but if they do, don't you have a burner email that you could use like a Proton mail or something?
I generally just don't give it out. Like, I just say like, no thanks, and they don't really follow up, right? Most of the time it's like some 20-year-old guy or girl. They don't really want to engage with you anyways. They'd rather just be scrolling on TikTok and selling you merch or movie tickets. I haven't been to movies in a long time. Movies are the one that I'm thinking of just because this is called whatever, Movie Peru or Movie Star Peru. But I can imagine there's probably a lot of people who go through the theater system, and I don't know what kind of security theater systems have. I'm not sure. I don't want to find out the hard way. I don't want my data showing up on the dark web. That would be sort of worst case scenario. So anyway, I would just say like that people are obviously still doing this, but you got to be getting close to a threshold here where everyone's just going to go, nah. I don't need the 10% off coupon or whatever. Like, I don't need it.
People don't care.
You don't think?
No, they do not.
What's it going to take for them to care? Like, this is got to be we got to be getting close. I mean, we're talking about a lot of stuff that most people are aware of in terms of like their day-to-day life. Like, it's healthcare, government, whatever this is. I don't know. Maybe I'm dreaming, but
are phones spying on people?
Yes.
People pay for this. It should be the opposite. People should be paid. So
yeah. So that's your kind of do bear shit in the woods moment, right? Is your phone spying on you and you're still paying for it?
People are willing to sacrifice convenience for a heck of a lot. It's a sacrifice of privacy for convenience and do that quite a bit. Anyways, let's keep this moving.
Sure.
Because Facebook has an interesting new feature called Link History, and they just launched this. And this tracks all the links users click on within the Facebook app. And this move follows similar practices by other tech giants like Apple and Google, which we just talked about phones just a second ago. And while Facebook claims the link history is meant to enhance the user experience, we all know the real reason why it's there, and it's for the infringing on privacy and data collection. And it is just a matter of time before Facebook will leverage this data for targeted advertising, right? And you know good well that this is going to lead for some sort of algorithmic manipulation and control over personal information. And they say people that are pushing for this, they're saying that the users will discover new content based on their interest. They're trying to say this is a good thing, and this is how they're trying to do it. But what is the cost of all this? I mean, let's be honest. Another thing, it will also enable Facebook to gain unprecedented insight into the user's online behavior that is beyond their platform. And this is going to potentially lead to misuse of data, probably censorship, and we have an election coming up this year. So there's a lot that you could see what's going to happen if you start connecting dots. But right now, they say that the decision whether to use or not use link history right now rests with the individual. Okay, I like the way they're saying this, but I don't truly believe it. Plus, how long before this is imposed on all users without their consent and just forced to take it? This is a slippery slope. I'm not sure who's using the Meta or the Facebook platform, but people are. You should know. You are the product. They're taking your information. This is another avenue in which they could do so, and it's going to be potential misuse as a result. It's terrible stuff, but you know what? If you're a Facebook user, you know this, and the onus is on you to leave that platform.
They're trying hard to call this something different, right? We've talked about it before. I am an Apple apologist sometimes, but I'll be one this morning. We talked about before how iPhones will inform you when an app wants to track your link and your thumb work across other platforms and other apps while you have their app open on the device. Facebook is notorious for this. Instagram notorious as well. There's a few others. They're not alone. Obviously, there's a bunch of other apps. I think Lululemon wants to do it as well. There's a bunch of them that want to do this tracking. Now, I do think there's some validity to the idea that tracking you across apps will help improve the advertisements you get. Of course. The question I have is, why should I let you do that? I don't want to see ads in the first place. Why should I let you improve the quality of the ads? Ideally, I would just get close to nothing and stay away from all this stuff that, identifies me as an individual person, as opposed to, what's probably closer to anonymized data, even though it's probably not all anonymous, as we talked about many times. What I don't get is how this is going to get past some of the measures that Android and Apple phones already have in place to prevent this. Facebook is just trying to use a different nomenclature for this quote unquote service to make it more inviting for users of these devices to allow it. I don't think this is going to work though. Is it? Certainly you're going to see this pop up and it's going to say, oh, link history. Like, because what this sounds like to me at first glance is like a navigation feature, right? Think about YouTube. When I use my YouTube account, I oftentimes go into my history to see what I watched before. If I forget about a video, I want to go back and read something again, or I use it a lot when I'm playing video games. If I got to go back and find a map or find an item hint or something like that, I'll go back into my video history and see, even if it was like a month ago, like I remember seeing this somewhere. What was I supposed to do with this thing? That's a useful feature. That's what this sounds like, link history. I think that's on purpose, and I think that's nefarious. Again, Len, show me the evidence that Zuckerberg is a competent operator. I don't see any evidence of this anywhere. This is like a really last gasp attempt to become synonymous with a feature that improves your experience from a navigation side, but actually is, just more advertising nonsense. Facebook sucks. Every platform Facebook runs sucks. Instagram, for example, I just found out about this a little while ago from my wife, who's like a bigger Instagram user than me. You actually have to now go to the homepage on Instagram and then tap like in the corner to get a feed that's only people you're following. Otherwise, it will just become an algorithmic feed right off the hop like Threads is. I wonder how long they're going to let that feature go for, right? If more and more people start opting out of advertising, opting out of targeting, they'll eventually just use the algorithm for everything and not give you a choice, because that ultimately is the model. It is advertising on Facebook or with Meta apps. So we'll see. Like you mentioned, it's going to be forced at some point. I'm hopeful that the hardware manufacturers will continue to give you an option to stop it like they do now. But who knows, right? If Apple launches some iPhone specific social networking app, which by the way, would be a smash hit immediately, the same way iMessage is, the same way other Apple ecosystem apps are, and didn't allow this kind of thing or worded it differently for iPhone users, I think it would be a hit. And then Facebook would really be in trouble, man. I really believe that. So let's, I say this every week, but let's see where this goes. I'm always interested in these stories because I use my phone. Like you and I think use our phones a lot differently. I have taken some guff from you and from others over the past, 2 years or year about how many apps are on my phone. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on different apps and giving my information away willy-nilly sometimes. But I think what Facebook is doing here is presenting an opportunity for the other players, specifically Apple in this case, maybe Google too. I don't know. Although Google tried their own social networking app several years back with Plus, right? Let's see if Apple does something similar. I'm not going to drag this out anymore, but I'll just one more time iterate, okay? Zuckerberg, not a good operator. He's simply not. You see this every week on this show. This guy has some other harebrained idea that's going to fail. So good luck if you're an owner of Meta stock. I wish you the best, but I doubt the outcome's going to be great for you 10, 15 years from now.
It's recovered quite a bit in the past little while. I haven't seen it in the past. Maybe
What hasn't? Everything is recovered. Look at
This is like compared to other ones.
Yeah, they went
it was from, like 90 to like 230
sure.
or something.
Yeah, if you were putting out Nintendo Wii Me avatars and claiming it was the future of the metaverse, your stock would have tanked too. And it's easy to recover from that. There's no going down from Wii Sports avatars and claiming it's the future. But let's see what the next year brings. Things will get a little tighter and be more competitive. Let's see. All I'm saying is let's see.
The man's a billionaire at this point. It doesn't really matter if he's going to be.
He also tore his ACL doing training, so I have a soft spot for him now. Poor guy. I did that.
Yeah, he was training fighting as well. I think it was like an MMA fight. Excuse me. Well, let's move on. Is in late October 2023, Apple sent out notification to some prominent Indian journalists and also opposition figures in politics, and they were warning them that their iPhones may have been compromised by some state-sponsored spyware. And what resulted as a result of this was there was a standoff between Apple and the Indian government, because the Indian government, they're denying, still to this day, they're denying Apple's claims. Mm-hmm. And they're dismissing them as unfounded and potentially politically motivated. And they also then decided, the Indian government did, to launch their own investigation to determine if these warnings from Apple were truthful. So imagine if the people that were responsible for starting the whole attack, they launched an investigation. You're not going to take their findings.
What? You wouldn't? I thought for sure.
Let's use a third party to figure this out. But adding fuel to the fire was that officials publicly doubted Apple's expertise and questioned their effectiveness on security measures. One thing, I mean, I'm not a big Apple fan, but one thing you shouldn't be able to doubt them on is their effectiveness on security measures, because they understand their product inside and out. And, I'm going to take their word more so than I'm going to take the Indian government with respect to Apple products. And the thing is, as soon as this report came out, then Amnesty International came out and they confirmed that Apple's report was true. So the worst fears are indeed truthful. And the human rights organization independently verified that the iPhones of several prominent Indian journalists were indeed affected by Pegasus. We've talked about this. This is the notorious spyware tool that was developed by the Israeli company NSO Group. And then, this pointed fingers right away to the government who might have been spying on people. The Indian government has been, I think they've been doing this for quite a while. They have had some shady practices in the past. And also, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, in India, there's some interesting, there's a huge battle going on between truckers and the Indian government. Have you seen that battle?
I have.
That's another story that's altogether, I don't want to get into it. But yeah, this whole thing about Apple and then using their products to spy on their people, this is scary stuff. If politically motivated, they could use this information then to potentially derail somebody's career, undermine their career, or maybe even jail them, even if they haven't committed a crime. So this is indeed very, very scary stuff. But this is another reason why people should use a device that is 100% secure. I'm not sure if it's possible to secure yourself from Pegasus if you're using even Apple, or does it even affect Android? I think it does, but even if it does,
I'm not sure. We hear about it a lot more on Apple phones than Android phones, but yeah, I think it probably does affect both at some level.
Yeah, I would imagine, if not, there'd be something similar. But either way, devices that we carry, I talked about this third of the show, these are spyware devices. You could even install what I have on mine is Graphene OS, but still, there's always going to be a hint of doubt. What's happened? Has your phone been compromised? Is the hardware compromised? Is anything out there taking information? So yeah, be very careful. But this is just reality. People are carrying these devices now, and they're going to be targets moving forward. Sometimes it's going to be easy targets, especially if you're going to be using some of this very effective products like Pegasus. But it's too bad, so sad for these people. But you know what? They paid for the products. They're using it, and hopefully they're going to change their habits moving forward.
Apple does such a good job securing its devices against most things. If for some evidence of this, you may remember or have heard of this jailbreak community that's popular in the iPhone silo. Have you heard of this before?
Sure.
Yeah, so you can like jailbreak old iPhones. I've been an iPhone guy on and off since the iPhone 4S, maybe, whatever. That was like 10 or 12 years ago now. Those phones used to be jailbroken day one. Whenever the new OS came out, day one, there was a jailbreak. You could just grab Cydia off a side load and off you go. Now, Len, there's almost no jailbreaks available for the new iOS operating systems for months at a time. They go without a jailbreak vulnerability. And so Apple's getting better at securing this stuff. The fact that they can't seem to stop this software tells me that they know there's a trade-off in there somewhere. And like you said, if they know the trade-off exists, I don't have any reason to doubt that this is what's going on. The Indian government, by the way, I mean, when have they been reliable as far as, protecting opposition politicians or opposition parties? Or, I mean, there's this meme that we used to talk about in, FOPO classes that India was the world's biggest democracy. I mean, it's got the most quote unquote voters, but I'm not 100% sure democracy is the word. And I see stories like this, and clearly it's not as free as everyone says. Now, that said, we know this goes on in the States too. We talked about the Twitter files on this show maybe 6-7 months ago, and we talked about it on CBP as well. This stuff goes on in every modern democracy. It's sort of villainized here by TechCrunch in India, but I think you'd probably find a lot of the same things happening in Canada, United States, European countries. So at the end of the day, the moral of the story is if you have an iPhone, maybe don't use it as your primary communication device. If you're a politician, maybe use something that's open source, a little more secure. Use apps like Keybase or Signal or Telegram or Session if you want to get really deep into the weeds or whatever. And stay away from stuff that you think is secure. There's almost no product that the average retail consumer can purchase that is secure at this point, I would say. Is that a fair assumption?
I would agree. I don't know of anything, and yeah, it's unfortunate. So if you're going to use a device, you're going to be, unfortunately, most likely going to be subjected to some sort of
pwned. You'll be pwned, man, over time.
Yeah, and you know what? Don't confuse corruption and democracy. Those are two separate terms.
Two sides of the same coin a lot of the time, right? So
they can be, but they're democracy is one thing. Corruption is sometimes it bleeds into it. Sometimes more so, sometimes less so. And one last thing, remember, the Canadian government has been at
odds.
Yeah, with the Indian government. So I'm wondering now what's going to happen with some of the devices that are held by Canadian government officials.
How about the ones that are manufactured in India? Like how many like, mid-range Android devices, for example, are manufactured, at least in part, in India. Apple, by the way, just moved a ton of its production to India last year to much fanfare because it was helping them get away from, reliance on the Chinese supply chain in the midst of what everyone thought was a bit of a cloudy period for foreign relations between US and China. Is this better? Like, I don't think it's better, is it? To me, it's not necessarily a good thing. You have a lot of devices now coming from a place that's known here, at least in this story, to be attacking those devices. So let's see how that plays out too. A lot of moving parts here, like always on this show.
But China's probably doing it even a
for
much
sure.
More severe
Everyone's doing it, right? Like you basically have to onshore this stuff, and then if you onshore it, you just get Blinken knocking at your door and telling you that you got a bug software. I don't know.
So
it's not. None of this is good. None of this is good. Open source is the answer, as you always say.
I agreed. Really, based off that, moving production to India is probably a step in the right direction.
Anyway, you can read the next story while I send some personal information over my iPhone. Go ahead.
Well, we'll move on about Windows 10 and Windows 11 protection story, because there's a new variant of a DLL search order hijacking. So DLL search order hijacking. And this could bypass security features on Windows 10 and Windows 11. Now, DLLs, I haven't heard about them.
DLLs are dynamic link libraries, right? I don't know I don't know exactly what they do, but I think they're like
it's like a shared code between programs. So
exactly. Yeah. Okay.
It's the same is even applicable in Linux, but it's different terminology. Anyways, this allows hackers to execute malicious code on a targeted system because this is a DLL search order hijacking.
Mm-hmm.
And the technique involves tricking the system, we're talking Windows 10 and Windows 11, into loading a malicious DLL file instead of the legitimate one. And this can be achieved by placing the malicious DLL in a specific directory that takes precedence over the default search location for DLLs. So once this is loaded, the malicious DLL could then execute arbitrary code on the system. Right? And this shows off a new potential attack and new dangers for Windows 10 and Windows 11, because this could bypass security mechanisms and it could execute code without requiring elevated privileges. This is pretty scary stuff.
Pretty wild,
and
yeah.
Additionally, then attackers could introduce vulnerable binaries into the attack chain to further compromise the system. Not that Windows 10 and Windows 11 are already locked down. Now you're throwing in this really big hole that crap you get through and gets even worse. So while Windows 10 and Windows 10 does include protections against DLL hijacking, this does show that cyber criminals and cyber attacks, these things are evolving. This is a threat that continually changes and it's a constantly moving target. And they say that you have to do the same things, such as keeping your system up to date and avoid suspicious software and don't execute anything from untrusted sources. But really, like, this is just showing a big hole in Windows 10 and Windows 11. And like I say all the time, friends don't let friends use Windows products. And this is another reason why you shouldn't. But another reason is another thing, you shouldn't be just clicking on stuff willy-nilly. By doing that and executing software that you don't trust you're just asking for problems. This is another example of that.
You can't be raw dogging executables. Like people cannot be doing this stuff. You got to stay away from files you don't know or have a clear sort of chain of custody on. Let's say, you know, the browsers help you with this. They all have the secure, you know, lock icon or whatever it is on your browser to tell you that the website is safe or safer than maybe the average website. The thing that gets me about this, Len, is, you know, we talk about this in Bitcoin a lot, how it's a constant cat and mouse game between Bitcoin and regulators. And, you know, can we code and implement faster than regulators can stifle and add legislation that, you know, slows down or bogs down the network and the adoption? The same thing is going on here. It's a constant cat and mouse game. And, you know, security is not a fixed target. It's continuing to evolve every day. We're literally doing this show every week with 5-6 stories about how some new vulnerability has been found or exploited. One of the things I like about operating systems like Windows, Linux, whatever, you know, Apple does this too with their Mac OS. It's just that the updates are fast and furious. And thankfully now, you know, I think they've done a good job alleviating some of the pressure points and friction points for updates. For example, you know, you'll remember, and you may find this actually professionally, I know I do, when I update my computer, I have to update it. It's like a huge time waster. Like they wait until the last effing minute to send me this huge 2 gig update. It's got to restart my computer. It takes 20 minutes to do that. Then another restart. Then we're setting your computer. Like it's a waste of time. And what I find on Windows 11 is that the updates are quick. They don't require restarts all the time. And they come basically every day or two. And I like that. I think that's good. I think that's a good thing for the average user. Now, is that going to help prevent, you know, DLL search order attacks? I don't know. It's hard, right? People are downloading stuff all the time. They're willy-nilly. You know, I still remember when we were younger, my father and mother using the family computer and my brother and I using it, and everyone's just downloading stuff constantly, something they saw or a friend told them about or whatever. It's an uphill battle for sure for a lot of retail PC users, retail Mac users, retail whatever users. But at the end of the day, the point of the whole exercise should be, you can't download stuff you don't know and give it permissions that it doesn't need. And in this case, you know, the permissions thing might not even save you, but what will save you is just being diligent with what you download and maybe just hold off on downloading stuff that, you know, looks shiny in the moment. There's always trade-offs when you add software to your computer.
And not everybody should be running full administrator or full root privileges.
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
You know,
for sure.
you know, if
Windows
you can avoid
11
that,
doesn't default to that, by the way. I found that out the hard way on the CBP video computer, adding stuff like OBS and whatnot.
okay.
It doesn't default to admin rights. I don't know if that's new. I don't remember if I had that happen on my laptop, but yeah, it's good, right? Like don't get me wrong, they're trying. The question is trying enough for a company the size of Microsoft? Like, I don't know. They should have this ironed out. But it's funny because when we talk about vulnerabilities that get found in other silos, often it's Microsoft security that's finding them, right, and helping patch. But then the same week, there's a story about how Microsoft let something slip through their own castle walls, right? So
It's been 30 years that they've had a stranglehold of the market. They've had
retail market.
80%, even the business side of things. It's like 80% of market capture is through Windows operating systems. And that's for 30 years it's been like that. That's a very long time to be very dominant. So you could maybe not be as diligent when providing updates or closing holes. Just making it as easy as possible for users was initially their goal, and it seems like that's kind of the case now.
It's still in 2023. I just pulled it up here. 2023, the Windows OS worldwide. So I'm guessing that's consumer or business is 70%. Pretty high, man. Pretty high. That's a
That
big
is
number.
incredible.
Yeah, what a stranglehold. No wonder these guys are getting on them about like Bing and Teams and all that, all these other environments that like rope you into the ecosystem. Apple does that too very well, but they don't seem to be taking any guff from regulators over it, at least not yet. But they will.
But look at the small players. You see, like Chrome OS is like 2%, if I recall correctly, and like Linux is like 2%. Mac OS is, I guess, like 10 to 15%, maybe 20.
Mac OS is 1/5. It says. So what's that? 20%. So there's 10% that's unaccounted for there. 70.
No, 1/5 of 100 is 20%. So
that's what I mean. That's what Mac OS has. It says here.
Okay. Yeah. So it should goes to show you the dominance that Windows has. But
Mhm.
let's do the last story, Joey, because
Sure.
let's talk about the Google OAuth endpoint. And in November 2023, researchers discovered a worrying trend, and this is malware that's targeting Google accounts. And this began exploiting an undocumented Google OAuth endpoint called multi-login. And this multi-login endpoint, meant for internal synchronization purposes, allowed attackers to revive expired Google authentication cookies. And this is stolen in previous breaches. This, in turn, granted them unauthorized access to compromised accounts even after victims changed their passwords or logged out.
Nice.
And this discovery sparked concerns because it means that there's a seemingly attack here for people that have these things that were compromised in the past, but even password resets won't stop it. And it's just going to create a whole bunch of problems for these people. The technique potentially impacts multiple information stealing malware families. I'm not going to name them because it's hard for me to pronounce them all. And this is raising fears and widespread abuse of all this. And adding to the worry of this is the scary part. Google remains unresponsive to researchers' inquiries about the multi-login endpoint and potential mitigation strategies. The lack of communication is fueling concerns that Google's awareness and their action plans regarding this vulnerability may not be up to snuff. And the possible solutions, they're not really provided because we don't get any information by Google, but they say keep your devices up to date. Make sure you keep everything, that you're not sending information anywhere that you shouldn't be.
Standard.
And, the standard garbage. But
that's
the reality
that's the 2-year credit monitoring of software vulnerabilities. Yeah, standard canned response, right?
Now, keep in mind how much information Google has obtained from people using Gmail or people using Chrome, and passwords are being recorded on there. There's so much information that Google has stored. And if people are going to be able to revive old accounts that were previously impacted by malware, so this is going to make them susceptible to getting a lot of information stolen moving forward. Really, this is a good reason why people should be moving away their information from the Google platform. And if you can self-host it, that's the best way to do it, or at least use open source software. If you're going to use a browser, Mullvad browser is good. Firefox is another good one. There's a lot of good options out there. Brave is another good one. Just do your own research. But yeah, this is just another reason why we shouldn't be relying solely on Google for storing our information, because it is a honeypot. Once it's compromised, all your information is then available. And this is pretty sad for people that are impacted.
What can we say? Why are people still using Chrome? Number one, I would be, remiss to leave that off the table here. I can't imagine you use Chrome for anything. It's weird because even the sort of normie user understands that Chrome is a resource hog. When you open Chrome, your computer slows right down. At least, in my case, been the tradition. The bigger problem here, though, to repeat a story we talk about every week or a concern we talk about every week, why hasn't the response been public, immediate, and comprehensive? How can we believe, like you mentioned already, right? The fear is that the response is not up to snuff. How can we believe anything else? Google has been spending time doctoring AI chat videos while this exploit is costing users personal information, account security, and more. How's that fair? How is that fair? This is just a story that no one knows about. I had no idea about this until I saw it in the newsletter. And now, I'm going to be a little more cautious when I have to use Chrome for password recovery or something like that. Cookies are a weird beast. They're the subject of a lot of different browser policy changes, and they have been over the years, right? Like you see now there's, constant warnings about, you're going to accept all the cookie history and all the stuff that every website wants to collect, and the browser wants to collect it. And like you mentioned, I'm sure there are other people who are looking in those cookies or trying to get to those cookies. They're supposed to be temporary for a reason. And now you're telling me that even if they are temporary, if someone's got them, they can restore them, and Google's not fixed it yet. This should be a full press release. No, am I dreaming that? Like, this seems like a pretty serious concern.
Yeah, to be honest, if you go on Google's security page, you can see there's so much updates they're doing from their security side of things.
Yeah,
they should include this on their daily security updates. I don't know why they haven't. It's very concerning. They haven't done so. Maybe they just don't have the information and that's even
well. If you can restore old cookies, like you can't get rid of the cookie system. At least as far as I can tell. Like, I'm not an expert, but it seems to me those things are basically synonymous with internet browsing at this point. So what are you going to do? If you can restore old cookies after they've been quote unquote deleted or become outdated or whatever, what are the choices you have at that point? I don't know what they are, but I would assume it's not going to be an easy fix. Doesn't mean they shouldn't do it and prioritize it. I mean, that's, you're talking about 100 million people or whatever that use Chrome stupidly. But at this point, you have to at least say something like, hey, be careful with your cookies, whatever, close your browser, update your firewall. Here's the antivirus software that we suggest using, blah, blah, blah. But they haven't done anything. And this is a major one. Like, I'm surprised. Sometimes I'm surprised that I haven't heard about the story outside of the newsletter. This is a good example of that.
Yeah. It's a good thing we're doing this because we're learning a lot about
yeah. I can send it to my friends like, hey, get off Chrome, idiot. So here's the problem. Anyway, that's it. That's episode 331 in the books. If you have not subscribed to the podcast, do so wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel here too. You can see me and Len with bags under our eyes first thing on Friday morning, trying to get this stuff out to you as fast as possible because that's what's important. So anyway, until then, next time I should say, take care of yourself. Happy New Year and be good out there, everybody.
Yeah, take care and Happy New Year.